different depending upon the level of hormones. But as a good example, this here you can see this is a vagina. This is a muscular tube that leads to the uterus. This is the uterus. It's going to be broken down into the cervical, neck, and the body of the uterus. The opening into the uterus at the cervical cap is the external os. It leads into the cervical canal, and then the internal os into the uterine canal. The uterine canal is connected to the fallopian tube here, and the fallopian tube can be broken down into 4 sections. You have the fembrae, these finger-like projections, leading up into the infundibulum, which is the funnel that leads to the ampulla. The ampulla leads to the isthmus, with the isthmus being the bridge between the fallopian tube proper and the body of the uterus. Again, fembrae, infundibulum, ampulla, isthmus. Now, supporting the uterus and the ovary, you have the broad ligament over here and over here. You have the mesovarium above the ovary and the ovarian ligament. You have the ovarian ligament over here and the suspensory ligament over here. Follicular development. This is the ovary. This is the ovary. Okay? It's just an enlargement. All these are ovaries. What this is showing you is that in the beginning of the 28-day cycle, you have very, very small follicles. They're called primordial follicles. They are exposed to FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, which stimulates the oocyte to enlarge. It goes into its next stage, the primary follicle. These are thecal and granulosa cells. You can see a little cluster of cells around them, indicating that this is a primary follicle. When the antrum begins to develop, a little cavity, it becomes a secondary follicle. And as the antrum expands and the follicle impinges on the outer lining, it becomes the Graafian, which is the mature Graafian follicle. Day 14, when luteinizing hormone, or LH, is released from the anterior pituitary gland, it causes the follicle to rupture. So here's the oocyte in the mature Graafian follicle, here's the ruptured follicle, and here's the oocyte. The oocyte is drawn into the fembrae, into the infundibulum, towards the ampulla and the isthmus, into the body of the uterus. When the oocyte leaves the follicle, this becomes a gland called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is producing progesterone, which stimulates the vascular development of the endometrium. It's called the stratum functionalis. It thickens, it becomes glandular, and embedded with spiral capillaries. The need for that is that if fertilization occurs here in the fallopian tube, by the time it gets to the endometrium, it's vascularized enough so that implantation and nutrient can be supplied to the developing embryo, which is what it is up until 8 weeks, and then it becomes the fetus. Subsequently, when the corpus luteum no longer functions, it becomes the corpus albicans, and then that marks the beginning of the menstrual cycle, as progesterone is no longer available to stimulate endometrial development.